Hi, my name is Markowitz. I'm the chairman of the board of the Holocaust Memorial Tolerance Center. On behalf of my vice chairman, Neil Tanner, and the other members of our board, I'd like to welcome you here today for a truly extraordinary event. I'd say beyond extraordinary, I'd say historical. I had an opportunity upstairs to speak with some of our speakers today, other guests. And the story of what happened to the Ovaherero people is so remarkable, so moving, and so unknown. We pride ourselves here on our ability to teach about the history of the Holocaust, where it came from, what life was like in Europe before the Holocaust, what happened during the Holocaust, what happened to the victims after, those who survived, what happened afterwards. We have quite a few survivors here today who will be introduced. But I've only learned recently about this precedent that was set in what is now Namibia, Southern Africa, in the early 1900s. And just as there are people who don't know much about the Holocaust today, I'm almost embarrassed to say there are adults that come into this museum and walk around sometime and they say, they did what? 6 million? Are you kidding me? People who don't know anything about it. And even more importantly, there are people who deny that it happened. So we deal with that all the time. But here is the first genocide of the 20th century. And I don't use the word genocide lightly. But there was a concerted effort to eliminate and murder an entire people, and done by the same people who then committed the worst crime of the 20th century, the Holocaust, maybe in history. And we know so little about it. And you don't hear anybody apologizing for it. You don't hear anything about reparations for it. And it is our duty as a Holocaust and Tolerance Center to make sure that story is told. And I'm so proud that we are the venue to have this program so more of us can learn what happened to the Herero people in the early 1900s. I want to particularly thank a couple of people. Most of you know Beth Lilach, our Senior Director of Education and Community Affairs, who's really the person who put this program together and conceived it. And I want to thank you, Beth, for everything you've done. And her partner, Jephta Nguherimo, who is the co-organizer. So before I butcher any more names, I am going to very proudly turn over the program to Beth, who will introduce all of other participants today. Thank you all for coming.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me back there? Judy, can you hear me? Okay. Just wave if you can't hear me. Before I start, my first word is an apology to all of the Namibians in here, because I will probably make your ears bleed when I try and pronounce some of your names, and I really apologize. I would also, before I forget, after the program and after the question and answer period, I'd like to ask all of the Namibians and all of the Holocaust survivors that are here to go into the alcove, which is right over there, so that we can take a group photograph. You'll notice on your, in your program that we are going to take a short break in between the panels, and this will allow you some time to either use the restroom. We're going to have coffee and some snacks in the back of the room and give you a little chance to stretch your feet, but it's going to be a very, very short break, no more than 10 minutes. On the registration desk in the lobby, we have these little postcards. If you like the program and you find today's afternoon very useful for you, then if you want to come back and attend other programs that we do, please fill out one of these cards and we will add you to our mailing list. I'd like to begin by thanking Robert Merkfeld. Where is Robert? Robert and I were in contact many moons ago, maybe about a year and a half ago, and he was the gentleman who introduced me to Jephta, and the rest is history. So thank you very much, Robert. And of course, I also want to thank Jephta Nguherimo, Jephta. As Steve mentioned, he really has been my partner and co-organizer in this entire program from start to finish with all the details, and really couldn't be occurring with such great success today were it not for him. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank all of our distinguished speakers and all of the guests who came here today, especially those who have traveled such far distances just to come to this program. We have the Honorable Ida Hoffman, who is a NAMA member of the Namibian Parliament, and she has come all the way from Namibia, as has Mr. Skara Johannes Matundu. From Germany, Dr. Reinhard Köstler. I'm looking forward to learning from all of the panelists today. I'd also like to recognize Isaac Hengutu. Isaac is the representative of the Ovaherero speaking community in the United States, and Ngandi Kamahuta is the interim president of the Association of the Ovaherero Genocide in the United States. I know there are members of both organizations here. Would you mind just standing up so we could recognize you? All members of both organizations. Thank you so much for attending today. I'd like to thank our Holocaust survivors and their children, any children of survivors or grandchildren. Could our Holocaust survivors and second and third generation please stand? Thank you for showing your support. And last but not least, I want to recognize and thank all of the descendants of the 1904 genocide. I can't imagine that there are any Ovaherero or Nama that are not somehow a descendant. Correct me if I'm wrong though, but thank you so much. And if I could ask all descendants of 1904 to please stand. It is a genuine honor and privilege to have you all here with us today. Thank you so much. The Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center is presenting this unprecedented program for 3 reasons. And the first reason is education. The 1904 genocide against the Ovaherero and Nama people needs to be studied and taught. It was a genocide, and that's just an indisputable fact. The genocide, for those of you that aren't aware, was committed by Imperial Germany during the occupation of Southwest Africa, which began in 1884 and didn't end until 1915 when England invaded at the very beginning of World War I. It's a genocide that has been overlooked and forgotten by everybody except for Ovaherero and Nama people. The second reason that we are conducting this program today is support. And I address this specifically to the Americans in the room. We must support Ovaherero, and Nama genocide descendants in their fight against denial, in their pursuit of reparations, and in their quest to reclaim all remaining victims' remains that are still housed in various German museums or institutions or universities. The descendants need allies, and part of the question and answer period will address how we as Americans can support them. The third reason that our center is presenting this program is Holocaust pedagogy. To understand the Holocaust, we have to study it and we have to teach it in context. You don't start teaching the Holocaust on the day that Hitler came into power in 1933. You have to go earlier. Look at the aftermath of World War I, the Enlightenment. You can go back quite a ways. One area that has not been included in Holocaust historiography is the genocide and the colonization that occurred in German Southwest Africa. And the history of the Ovaherero and Nama people are part of the context of the history of the Holocaust. The second gallery in our permanent museum, and for those of you that haven't been through our museum, I encourage you to go after the program. When you walk into the second gallery, the first thing that you'll see is a small monitor, and it presents the evolution of Nazi biological racism from beginning with German Southwest Africa and going all the way through to Mengele's horrific experiments in Auschwitz-Birkenau. The 1904 genocide, I said that this is unprecedented, and I asked I asked Jephta and some of the other Ovaherero if they had ever heard of a program like this being presented publicly. Sometimes the Ovaherero Nama genocide is mentioned in certain university courses, but I could not find any public forum where this topic is presented, let alone bringing in both Nama and Ovaherero descendants. So it really is unique. So you are really part of history in the making. And I'm very proud that we are doing this at our center, and I hope this is just the first of many programs with the Ovaherero and Nama community. The links between German Southwest Africa and the Holocaust occur in three main ways. First, the people. There were perpetrators in the German colony that either influenced or became active participants in Nazism. Some of them that were indirect but did have an influence were people like Heinrich Göring, who did have influence on his side. Eugene Fischer, some other people. That's something that I will address during my panel, and I won't go into it right now. The second link is ideology and policy. Colonial policies and racial ideologies influenced the ideologies of Hitler as well as other Nazi leaders, and there is a lot of evidence showing this. The third reason is implementation. Racist and genocidal ideologies in German Southwest Africa were carried out in similar ways by the Nazis. There were no gas chambers, but there were other ways where genocide occurred that were shared by both mobile killing units in German Southwest Africa as well in Nazi-controlled Europe. There are also extreme differences between the two. The two biggest differences, and these were addressed by Steve, are denial and reparations. Although a Holocaust denier or revisionist pops up in the news every once in a while, nobody really takes them seriously because they really don't have any political authority. And although Holocaust reparations have not been perfect, they have not always been just or what they should be, there have been great successes. And one of our panelists, Kenneth McCallion, will be addressing that issue. Ovaherero and Nama people are still fighting, as Steve mentioned, and as you'll hear from the panelists, for full official recognition from Germany, for reparations, and for the return of all victims' remains. In 1998, the German president, Roman Herzog, visited Namibia, and he proclaimed, and I'm quoting, these are not my words, "We are, of course, aware that the conflict between the German colonial administration and the Hereros was out of order. It was a short period of joint history that was not very happy. But our two countries have left behind the bondages of the past. That is beyond offensive. That is just out and out combination of denial and revisionism. Excuse me for mispronouncing. Nguherimo, a former Namibian diplomat, was outraged with the blatant revisionism by Herzog, and he responded by saying this: the Germans repick the Jews because they're white. They pat us on the head because we're black and African, and they don't think we count so very much. The Ovaherero and Nama genocide has been eclipsed from history far too long. In addition to its forgotten place as the first genocide of the 20th century, the eugenics and genocidal links to the Holocaust have all but been ignored or erased. And to understand the Holocaust, we must study the German colonial period in Southwest Africa. To show our respect to the Ovaherero and Nama victims, we must educate people about the genocide, and we do that here at the center, and support their great-grandchildren's fight for justice. You can make a difference, and I'm speaking to everyone in the room. You can show your support in many ways. One thing you can do is take one of these really lovely postcards that we have out in the lobby. It's already addressed for you to the German Chancellor. And it basically is saying, enough with denial, give reparations, and give back the remains. Take one of these, throw a stamp on it, get your voice out there. If she receives enough protests, enough support for the Ovaherero and Nama, then hopefully things will change. Sometimes it's very easy to be an ally, and so we wanted to give everybody a chance to do something. I thank you very much for your time, and this is going to be an amazing program, so thank you all very much. And now Jephta will come up here, and he is going to continue with some historical context and some remarks. Thank you. And all the panelists, be very careful of the stage. It's big.
Good afternoon. I'm Jephta Nguherimo, a Namibian scholar and activist, and I have been pursuing this issue of Herero and Nama genocide for the past 14 years. I remember I spent a lot of money traveling to Europe, the money I didn't have. My wife had to endure me doing that, spending money we didn't have. My purpose here is just to give you a little bit of historical context, and really thank Beth and the center for hosting us. When we spoke with Beth, it's like, how can we tell this story to the American people? What can we do? And she opened it up, and we discussed after lengthy conversations what to do, and we finally came up with this program. I really cannot say more, but I appreciate it very much, and the Herero communities are very appreciative of your effort to bring this, and we hope you work together. This is what they call a little known, unknown genocide. And that's the question that many people are asking, but how come we don't know this? Because at the end of World War I, believe it, when Germany was defeated, the British government shamed them, I believe, that you are not qualified to have or possess colonies the way what you did in Namibia or Southwest Africa at the time. So after the League of Nations was disbanded, the British government did a commission of inquiry immediately after 1904-1908 war to talk to the survivors what happened. And then after that, they wrote a book called the Blue Book. The Blue Book contained all the stories and what happened. And between the European governments, they agreed that this book must be destroyed. And so the book many copies were destroyed, But of course, it's a book. There were so many copies, and some of the copies survived. And I managed to get one at the Library of Congress, and so some of them in London. And so the Blue Book has been the guiding, basically, the Bible for us to help us to tell this story. And so, but this is a story, it's unknown to you, but this is our story. We live through that. Every single Herero person or Nama person right now is a story that has been passed on from generation to generation. I heard the story from my grandmother about her mother. So my great-grandmother went through the genocide. She was 17 at the time and survived the desert, survived the concentration camps, and she lived up to 100 years old. She died in 1976 or something like that. So there is a story, and every single hero here must have a story, and the Nama people must have a story about what happened. So it's not a written story, because we are oral culture. So we do tell stories. But when you listen to our stories, and when you read the diaries of the German soldier story, the only difference is like, the hero will say like, it was in the afternoon, and the German will say it was 12 o'clock. So it's just minute differences. And I think Professor Kessler will attest to that, who has done a lot of research on that topic. So the presentation is going to walk you through what happened, the historical context. Who were the Nama and the Hereros? They were people living in Namibia, of course, with their formalized government or semi-government structures. They had life going on. And the German, of course, came and wanted to take the land. And there was a conflict between the natives and the Hereros and Namas. And then the war broke out. So it was a protracted war, but it ended up being a miserable war for the Hereros and Nama. So they are going to tell the stories. I don't want to go into that. Then they are going to talk about the sexual violence against women, and we are going to hear a presentation from Ms. Vepuka Kawari, and she's going to talk about the role of women in the war and what happened. So we do have a lot of light-skinned Hereros and Namas in Namibia, and this is a result of some forced marriages or some consensual marriages between the Germans as well. So she's going to tell that story. And then, of course, we have Ida Hoffman, very activist and has been pursuing this issue since 1992, and fearless government critic on this issue, and most important person to get to know. Traveled all the way from Namibia and all that Skarma to. So she's going to tell you what is happening now with the government of Namibia vis-a-vis reparations and other issues. And Professor Kessler will talk about the denial of the German about this genocide. If you travel to Germany right now, there is not a single, maybe this year, there was no single mention of the Herero genocide or Namibian colonialism in the German textbook, high school textbook. In fact, when I went there, the German was saying, "What are you talking about? There's something more than the Holocaust?" They said, "Of course, in Namibia." So it's absent and has been suppressed within the German communities or communities. So it's very interesting how they managed to keep that story under the rugs. But it's coming up. Activists are coming and challenging the notion of, because most Germans believe that Germany didn't have even African colonies. So Professor Kessler is going to tell you about those dynamics within the German. I think it's very useful. And of course, we have a lawyer from Ken who's going to listen and advise about the parallels in terms of reparations and the struggle for reparations. So I'm trying to provide, I don't want to take much of your time or the time of the speakers, but that's all what we're going to go through. Is there anything I missed, Beth? I'm missing to introduce. There are so many important people in the house, of course. The lawyer who's trying to help the Ovaherero to pursue reparation, Mr. Robert Matfield, over there. Did you see that already, Robert? a very prominent person, and there's a lot of my colleagues who are working. Do you want my Herero community to praise them again? No, not this time. But also thank you for the Ovaherero speaking community in the United States, OSCU. They have been very prominent. They were the first organization that took a petition to the German embassy in Washington, D.C. to demand reparation. It was been very, very effective. And so the first speaker is going to be Mr. Johannes Skaramatudu, and is a brief about bibliography. He is a lawyer by profession. He got his law degree from the University of Namibia, and post-law degree from the University of Pretoria, South Africa. He's also a historian and a scholar, and have done some research on genocide, Herero genocide from a legal perspective, and lately has published extensively on the Ovaherero case for reparation. So he is Mr. Skara. Okay, I forgot one thing. You are saying Mr. Matugu uniform and the Puka uniform and all those beautiful looking women in their Herero traditional attire, and Miss Ida Hoffman in the Nama traditional attire. Basically, people are asking, what does the uniform represent? In terms of the head of the ladies represent the horns of the cattle. We are cattle people. So that's what I know. And Mr. Skara's uniform is the uniform that were used by the Germans during the war. And what happened during the war, the Hereros will attack German soldiers, and sometimes they confiscate the uniform and make it and disguise themselves as German soldiers. So this uniform, they have been using it like that for years until after the war, when the Germans were so after the leader of the rebellion died, then the Herero community asked the South African government to give this leader a proper military burial, Mr. Samuel Maharero. So he has the uniform, and they have been every August for the past 112 years, they go and celebrate in Okahanja in this beautiful uniform of Ovaherero.